We've finally gotten rid of Joe Biden from the presidency, but another Biden-like figure still lingers out there. And no, it's not Hunter Biden, it's much worse. Here in Nebraska, we have our very own version of Joe Biden in the form of Governor Jim Pillen. Both Pillen and the former President Joe Biden are not celebrated for their policy triumphs, but rather for their comedic potential. If it weren't for the disastrous consequences of their leadership on the citizens they're supposed to serve. It's as if they're intentionally trying to harm people, but they're too inept to pull it off deliberately. Instead, their puppeteers exploit them to serve their own interests. The comparison between Pillen and Biden isn't about their political visions, but their leadership, or the profound absence of it. Unless you consider leading a charge off a cliff, like a buffalo jump, to be a form of leadership. Public opinion has painted both with the same brush, casting them as the court jesters, mindless fools, and brain-dead stooges of politics. Jim Pillen, akin to Joe Biden, has turned into a punchline in political discussions. With his hog farming background, Pillen might appear as the epitome of Nebraskan authenticity until he opens his mouth to speak. Then, any semblance of authenticity is obviously absent. But unfortunately, in reality, this just heightens the comedy. His simplistic, straightforward approach to governance echoes Biden's famous gaffes and moments of public bewilderment, sketching a portrait of two leaders whom many see as disengaged or ill-prepared for the nuanced demands of their positions. Both are portrayed as dim-witted stooges, handed scripts they can't even follow because they're too obtuse to manage reading the words in front of them, even when spoon-fed by their handlers and caretakers. Joe Biden struggled to read from a teleprompter due to dumbness and dementia, rendering him essentially brain-dead, while Jim Pillen's inability to speak clearly or read coherently is chalked up to his dumbness and drunkenness, often mumbling incoherently as he attempts to decipher the text, 3 sheets to the wind. Both leaders have become the butt of numerous jokes for various reasons. Pillen's policies, particularly his handling of property taxes and education funding, have drawn criticism so sharp it veers into mockery. In a similar vein, Biden's frequent verbal blunders and policy flip-flops have turned him into a meme machine across social media platforms. They are viewed as jokes, and the political careers of Pillen and Biden resemble a string of punchlines rather than genuine attempts at leadership. Pillen can barely accomplish anything because he's seen as too dim-witted, pushing forward irrelevant ideas just to prove he can make decisions, with his handlers allowing these futile attempts to keep him busy and out of their way. Biden, on the other hand, is perceived as indifferent, serving merely as a distraction while his handlers and caretakers maneuver behind the scenes. Thus, both Pillen and Biden are depicted as dim-witted puppets, strategically placed by their handlers to divert attention from the real machinations and misdeeds happening out of the public eye. They're presented as public jesters, whose presence in the spotlight serves more as an embarrassing, albeit amusing, diversion, highlighting their role as the fall guys in this political comedy. The essence of why Jim Pillen could be dubbed Nebraska's Joe Biden lies in their shared reputation for inadequacy or simplicity in handling political matters and their rise to their undeserved positions. Critics, or also known as normal people with brains, often decry both for their apparent lack of depth or intelligence in understanding policies and for their embarrassing blunders in public discourse. In Nebraska, where directness is cherished, Pillen's approach might be viewed as an exaggerated version of this quality, paralleling how Biden's down-home manner has been ridiculed on the national scene. Pillen, seen as a naive fool, was propped up by handlers and investors to serve as a quintessential Nebraskan figurehead for their schemes, much like Joe Biden was leveraged as a political mercenary, willing to do whatever his financial supporters demanded. Thus, both Pillen and Biden are painted as clueless pawns under the control of their financial patrons and political puppeteers. Pillen was chosen for his Nebraskan image, having played football for the University of Nebraska's Cornhuskers and famously recovering a fumble, making him a known entity despite his obvious incompetence. Investors evidently needed a malleable figure, and Pillen fit the bill, much like Biden, who clawed his way up through political ranks by being a slimy opportunist, ready to serve his backers' nefarious purposes. Both are seen as hapless tools, managed and manipulated by those who hold their leashes. From gaffes in public speeches to policy choices that frequently miss the mark, Pillen and Biden have become goldmines for political satire. Be it Pillen's botched handling of Nebraska's electoral system or Biden's slip-ups at press conferences, both are seen by critics as epitomes of the absurdity in modern politics. They try to push through initiatives void of substance, only to backtrack when pressured by special interest groups, revealing their pliability and susceptibility to outside influence, even from the lunatic left. They often talk about nonsensical ideas, only to forget them by the next day or contradict themselves within the same conversation, thanks to their forgetfulness and sheer stupidity. Pillen and Biden are notorious for their meager intellectual offerings, quickly rebutting their own statements due to their inability to remember what they've just said. Pillen, often under the influence, can't recall his own ramblings, while Biden, seemingly disengaged and uncaring, speaks without any regard for consistency or accuracy, making their words essentially meaningless since they barely understand or remember what they're discussing. Both Pillen and Biden are plagued by issues concerning their bodily functions. Rumors abound that neither can manage to relieve themselves appropriately, leading to unfortunate accidents. Biden, infamously dubbed President Poopy Pants, is said to frequently soil or stain his underwear, necessitating diaper use. He's reputed to require assistance from the Secret Service, also known as his but wipers, to clean up after himself. Meanwhile, Pillen, known as Jimbo Pee-Pee Pillen, has a notorious habit of urinating after passing out drunk, earning him the nickname Pissy for both his bathroom habits and attitude. He's known to pass out in various locations like his bed, a lazy boy chair, or even on the floor, where he then urinates. Joe Dirty Diapers, Biden allegedly fills his diapers multiple times a day, continuing to wear them until his Secret Service but wipers intervene to change him before he goes nighty-night. On the other hand, Jim P. Pants Pillen, known for his daily alcohol consumption, often wakes up in his own urine, requiring his handlers or babysitters to hose him down the next morning. Together, Pillen and Biden resemble infants with their hygiene issues, each for different reasons, painting a picture of two leaders whose personal habits are as revolting as their moral compasses, both steeped in the filth of their own making. Both Pillen and Biden are brainless, childlike idiots. They've been known for their profound stupidity all their lives, but are now known as profoundly stupid yet useful pawns. They're seen as hopeless losers, barely capable of self-care. Biden, who underwent brain surgery, where part of his brain was removed, saw no loss in his cognitive abilities, since he had already lost his mind. Since then, he has only become a more miserly, foolish individual who became even more increasingly senile during his presidency. During his presidency, he was a clueless stooge, seemingly disconnected from reality and unaware or unconcerned about his public persona as a national embarrassment. Similarly, Jim Pillen is an embarrassment for Nebraska due to his lack of any intelligence, abhorrent cluelessness, and overt obliviousness, which is compounded by his alcoholism. At public events, acting as governor, he's always seen with a drink in hand, often an empty glass, since he's already consumed its contents. It can be certain that Pillen is always either drunk or nursing a hangover, using more alcohol as a solution, which marks him as an abominable drunken disgrace. He struggles to speak clearly even when semi-sober, But when drunk, which is his usual state, he can barely function. Even with his inebriated existence, there's a peculiar notion and interesting theory, to some, that Pillen might even seem more coherent when intoxicated, as his baseline stupidity can't get any worse. But in any case, he remains a drunken, embarrassing figure. In the tapestry of American politics, Jim Pillen, governor of Nebraska, and Joe Biden, former president of the United States, are not linked by the threads of policy success or ideological ambition, but by their roles as comedic figures. Critics view them not for their governance, but as jesters in their political spheres, where their actions and words serve more as fodder for satire than for serious political dialogue. The essence of their comparison lies not in what they achieve, but in how they are perceived, as the idiots of their respective arenas, ripe for ridicule due to their apparent oversights and missteps. Both Pillen and Biden are depicted as puppets, with strings pulled by investors and handlers from global corporations, dictating their every move. Pillen, oblivious to this control, naively sees himself as a shrewd leader, while Biden, fully aware of his manipulation, remains apathetic, basking in the power and attention. Their leadership is characterized by a lack of depth and preparation, with public blunders painting them as disengaged from the nuanced demands of governance. This narrative reflects a broader critique on modern leadership, where the line between policy and persona blurs into a spectacle of folly. Instead of being celebrated for their achievements, they are mocked for their incompetence and the chaos they inadvertently sow. Their legacies, marked by personal embarrassments and policy failures, serve as cautionary tales, illustrating a political landscape where the true power lies not with elected leaders, but with those who control them from behind the scenes, turning governance into a comedy of errors.